So I just wanted to chat with you. I saw a video of you online and I thought it was pretty awesome. And I thought what you're doing is pretty amazing. So I don't know if you just want to jump into this. I think that's the easiest thing. I just want to have a conversation.
That sounds good. Yeah, yeah. I'm assuming, I think you're referring to like I guess which video? Because there's a
I
concerning
think there was
amount of
a
videos.
video on your PhD balance website and
Yeah, the
talking
like the
about.
red dress video.
I think so. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was like struggling with just things in academia, uh,
yeah,
in the research game.
yeah. Gosh, when was that? When did I think that video was probably 2018. I think that was,
Okay.
yeah, it was June 2018. And so that I think a lot of people have seen that video now. I was so a little bit of a backstory on what that was all about. I
Can I
kind
just,
of,
before you go, I just
yeah,
want to introduce you just
oh
so we
yeah,
can use this. We could post it online. You probably have seen that I post a
yeah,
lot.
yeah,
So for those of you who don't know Susanna, so this is Susanna, Dr. Susanna Harris, and she is a PhD immunologist,
yeah. I
right?
got PhD in microbiology and immunology.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. And I just wanted to share her story. I saw her online. Um, I'm very open about the challenges of the whole research process. And I just want everybody to know that they're completely normal, I guess, if they're going through challenges with it. And anyways, so welcome, Suzanne. This is amazing.
Oh, I mean,
Uh,
it's really cool. I super appreciate that you reached out, and I love starting with that, which is that, man, if you are struggling during the research process, during PhD or master's or any aspect of that, it's super normal. And also, and I know that you've talked about this as well, it's one of those things that's really normal and also deserving of attention and deserving of, if it's something that is is bothering you in ways that are no longer serving you, and that is causing you harm, it's also good to kind of face that version of normal. Something I like to point to is that more than 50% of people around the world at some point will get treatment for vision. And so not having perfect vision is incredibly normal, but we don't really go around telling people, oh, it's normal to not be able to see that well. You don't need glasses. You don't need this. Or I think something that I heard in grad school, and I know that a lot of people heard, was, well, grad school is supposed to be hard, and a lot of people, it's a rite of passage, and so I think grad school is supposed to be hard. Research is by definition difficult. You're doing things that haven't been done. At the same time, it shouldn't feel like a hazing process. It shouldn't be something that you get out of it and feel like it really hurt you. So I love that you bring that up at the start.
Yeah, I think so. My view is probably not a lot. It's probably unusual, but my view is that it should be empowering. It should be something that you should do that is very transformative in who you are and make you feel like you can do anything at the end of it. It's unfortunate with the norms in the scientific community that might not be the case, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you want to share about this video that you did, and then what you're doing now? I think this PhD balance project seems amazing.
You.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, so this video is a recording of a live presentation with this group called the Monty. They do live storytelling, and people talk about the big stories of their life, the things that have gotten to them to where they are today. And it's a mix of short, fun stories, longer, difficult stories. I'd gone to several of the shows before, and I knew the person who runs this group, and he and I talked a little bit about my PhD journey. This was, I guess I was at the end of my fourth year, ended up being about 5.5, 6 years. And he said, that's a pretty intense story. That would belong on the stage. And so what my story was that I kind of I have a history and I have a family history of dealing with some different mental illnesses, and struggling with a lot of different kinds of symptoms and things. And this is something that I kind of had a hint of growing up, and then different things emerged in undergrad. And I kind of always told myself, like, well, once I get to that next thing, then I'm going to feel accomplished. Then all this stuff is going to go away. And so gone to grad school and had some, felt like maybe I didn't belong there. I think the stuff that's really common. And then, but I kind of held on to the fact that I was a pretty good writer. I really enjoy communication. And so we got to the comprehensive exam to become a PhD candidate, and actually failed the writing portion. And that, combined with some different kind of personal stuff that was going on, was just really devastating. But again, I told myself, okay, this is hard. PhD is hard. Feeling like I don't belong here is just normal. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to resubmit, and I'm going to pass. And I'm going to feel better. And what ended up happening is I passed, and I just didn't feel better. In fact, I wasn't really feeling anything at all. And the term for this, that I later figured out is anhedonia. It's the term for when you're not enthusiastic about really anything. The things that used to bring you joy, you can still do them, but you feel kind of blank. And so I dealt with depression before, but this was kind of a deeper level. And I mean, now I know that, like, at any given time, up to 10% of graduate students are dealing with suicidal ideations. And that's something that I heard about a couple of years ago. But at the time, that felt like I was dealing with that, and I felt like, well, no one else is, and so I'm clearly not meant to be in this program, not meant to be here. And kind of the ending of the video is that one of the things that I did to say, okay, like, I'm going to check off all the boxes. I went and got a tattoo that tattoo is permanent, so I still have it. I got a tattoo on my wrist that says, can't really read it because the writing is in white, but it has a little sun, and it says another sunrise, as a reminder of, there are always going to be some dark periods, and I've started to learn to accept that. And there's always that next day. There's always turning that corner, and it's worthwhile to wait until you get to that sunrise. So, I'm very, very glad that I did have the support that I had. And so I actually filmed that video almost exactly a year after getting the tattoo. So it was, the support from people who have seen it has been just like really heartwarming and amazing. And a lot of people have reached out and said, thank you for doing that. It resonated with me. Or I think one of my favorites is that sometimes professors will reach out and say, I think my student is struggling with something similar. This really kicked me into gear to think about how important it is that I talk to them.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, I think a lot of people resonate, including myself, with many of the feelings that you go through. And it's a sort of sense of helplessness that you go through, because you think like, oh my gosh, I'm the only person. And, there's no tomorrow with the work that's put on to you. You feel like, I don't know, just all these things that build on top of you. And you think if you don't get that one thing, then, oh my gosh, the world's going to end, right? Like you don't get, it's just a stupid test, right? You don't pass your comprehensive test, or, and it's entirely subjective, based on a couple, and it's usually one or two people that are making that judgment. and you're really absorbing all of that stuff. So I mean, when I watch your videos, like, oh my god, you got the feelings so right, um, of going through the sort of journey of what it's like to do anything, like anything that is of importance, like a PhD, because it is something that's new and different. I do research on entrepreneurship,
Mm,
a little bit anyways, in like innovation, that kind of area. And entrepreneurs feel kind of the same sort of thing because they're sort of facing these huge battles and nobody's giving them the right answer. They're just kind of lost
mm,
with what they're doing, and capturing that, and but as well, like releasing it.
mm,
Like there's all
mhm,
this poison in your body that
mhm,
you're building up, and releasing that and saying, hey, I'm normal to experience this. um, I just need to process it in the ways that I need to process it. And I think coming out like you did, in the sense of being open with sort of these deep challenges that you're facing, was just, I mean, it was remarkable, very touching. It was very courageous in all. It really was. Don't
mm.
downplay it,
Well, I mean, I'm laughing because what the video doesn't capture is what happened right afterwards, which it fades, but it fades quickly because as soon as the applause starts, I just like run off the stage. um, so yeah, there was definitely a feeling of like, what did I just do? What did I just put in the
Mhm.
world? And I think exactly what you're saying. There's this huge benefit to getting it off of your chest because if you're dealing with this kind of stuff, you're first of all dealing with it. There's a lot of it's just really hard. It's just really heavy. It's hard to do anything else, and especially if you're trying to do other hard things, it's a nightmare. Um, but also, if it's a secret, then you're dealing with this extra layer of trying to hide it, trying to feel validated while people might not really know. It can just taking that off, that can be such a weight lifted. And something I've been asked about a lot and I've thought about myself is like, have I faced any negative outcomes from that? And I think I have. I mean, there have been things that eventually got through to me from the grapevine, or like there was one time where I don't think a group of people realized that their email was going to be sent to me, their back and forth communication, um, of having questions about if I actually cared about science and if I had the fortitude.
uh,
It was
oh my
different, but I
God.
think it evens out because I think being transparent, when I've met some of the most incredible people and I've been able to have genuine relationships with them and talk about this hard stuff. And then two, like if someone knows this about me and they know where I've come from and they know what I've gone through and what I go through, and they don't want to be associated, like it's probably better that they don't. It's probably better for me. It's probably better for them. Um, it's such a small group, and I thought that was going to be harder, and it really isn't. So
Yeah, I mean, isn't it awesome to be open about things like that and just be like, if you can't, I always, and this is taking me so long to process this and think, but if you can't, um, love me or like me for just me being me at this moment, like the problem is on you.
right.
Like they're the ones that are having the issues with processing
Mm-hmm.
themselves because they are sort of projecting onto you. And it takes a lot of courage to be open about that. And so, being that person that is, um, telling your story, and then as well being courageous enough to just be like, okay, there's these people are dealing with things in their own way and not absorbing some of that hate that you got,
Mm-hmm.
is a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's it's I think lots of people appreciate it, including myself. Um, and I think it's an issue that we have to deal with in the research game in terms of not necessarily that it like I've read the sort of philosophy of science and it's always been around, right? Like a lot of this sort of tension has been around, but I think we could do things in a much better way. I think, having community or coming at things in a softer way, I think it's actually, I don't know, I think it's a wonderful way to approach the world. Um, and I've come from my perspective, I was always the person that was really like hard line on science, like just go for it, and just do everything possible, and all of that sort of soft stuff is it doesn't matter. And it wasn't until I just was like, I can't keep going on like this. I need to address some of these issues in a more open way. Um,
Well,
and
something, oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, something that I love about what you do is that focus on community. And I did go back and look at like, well, where did reciprocity come from? What is this origin story? And I think it's great that you have a very like useful, accessible origin story, and it's kind of very clear. But to that point where you said, man, I wish this thing had existed when I needed it. And I believe that people will want to help. And I think sometimes it sounds so silly, but sometimes those assumptions can feel scary of this is useful and people will want to help. And it's something that I've definitely see. But I would actually love to know kind of like what your view is on community, like what that means for you.
Oh my gosh, that's really tricky. I honestly, because I mean, part of me knows that science is the reason why it's so intense, I guess is the way to put it, is because there's market forces, right? It's not necessarily the individual that is having to sort of deal with this, but it's the market. So if you don't have this high enough standard, then you're just not going to get accepted and quote unquote accepted anywhere. So I do struggle with what that means because, to be honest, building community, I think you have to take a bit of a more of a softer tone and pull back on the sort of going for um, being the best in the field, right? And say, hey, there's other things that actually matter than having X number of publications or going to this place. That is like a really tough thing to do when you're trained right from high school, probably even before that you get your identity from education and sort of excelling at education. So that's where I struggle. I'm playing in my head. I'm like, I don't know what that looks like other than encouraging people to do kind of random acts of kindness, whatever that might be. And that's different for everybody,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think I like that, and I can see too, because I after my PhD, I during the PhD I got really into communication, digital communication, kind of learned how to play the social media game, and was able to apply it to more settings that you can make money from, working with companies to help them do their communication and marketing. And I took a job in as the lead of marketing for a company that writes grants, SBIR, STTR grants for startup companies to get money from the U.S. federal government. And that was sort of my first introduction to the world of innovation and research and entrepreneurship outside of academia. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I think what you brought up earlier of academics and entrepreneurs are not so different. You're constantly, you have to prove that you're the best. And also it's kind of funny, like what is the best? What is the best anything? But especially, what's the best researcher? What's the best
Yeah.
startup? What a silly question that we keep holding people to. And it causes a lot of isolation because what if other people see that you're imperfect? Or what if you accidentally tell somebody who's going to take your biggest idea or use your weakness against you? And it's like, is this really where we should spend our time? The world has so many problems. This is what we're going to be doing? No, I think it's
I know, but
ridiculous.
you know what? All those things are going to happen to you, and I'm sure they've happened to you. They've happened to me, you know, indirectly, or at least I sort of perceive those things. It's never out in the open, right? Like it's not something that you're like, it's definitive in any sort of
Mm-hmm.
way. But these things, all of the sort of classic things, happen to you, and then you just have to learn how to. Um, that's where it becomes like a lot of self-confidence, I guess, where you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, okay, I'm good with me and just me living in some
Mm-hmm.
sort of way. And that's where I try to be open with just being a normal kind of person, I guess, with like being out in the open of just I'm this is us. This is my family. This is my life. And that is, I don't know if you feel the same way. It's hard to be even open like that about, just the goings about of your own sort of private life in public in the scientific career or the sort of research domain.
Yeah.
I think in other domains is easier, but in the scientific careers, it's a little tricky.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, something that's interesting about, so um, yeah, I worked in communications and engagement in in the entrepreneurial space and then also in the biotech venture space. And now I kind of found myself going sort of kind of back in a circle, but sort of in a spiral where now I'm much closer to academia again, but not as an academic. Now I actually work with academics to do their communications and their PR. And so now, I get a front row or I don't know, a backstage view of what it looks like to be an assistant or an associate professor who's trying to build their status and trying to show the world that they are the next top person and that their science is amazing. And it's intense. I do not envy that job. I was worried I was going to go back into it and feel a lot of regret. And I was like, nope, I get to do all the
Yeah.
stuff I like without all of that pressure. But I do think a difference that I've seen that's interesting in that kind of how much can you communicate about yourself is that there seems to be more leeway in the entrepreneurial startup, especially venture space, of positioning yourself. Of everyone knows what you're putting on LinkedIn is a little, yeah, it's a little airbrushed.
Sounds so
It's
right.
yeah, they don't. You want it to feel authentic, but if you're used to that game, you're like, it's not. That's not how
Yeah.
you really spent your weekend, though.
No, no,
Um,
exactly.
versus I think academics, especially, there's any form of positioning. Like it's if you tell people the truth, if you tell people a polished version, I just think I think oftentimes scientists, the reason that people become great scientists, and that doesn't mean like the big names of the world, but rather just people who do research and do it well, are good at their job is being highly skeptical and challenging everything and poking at everything and
Mhm.
dissecting it. But we forget that we don't have to apply that to people all the time. We don't have to
Mhm.
judge them every moment, and we don't need to judge ourselves. And so I think it can be really difficult to live your truth and share it. Um, and like you said, just accept that, hey, not everyone's going to like it, and that's okay, and you can get hurt and you're going to be fine. So yeah, it's really interesting.
That's really cool. So tell me how, because I've not heard of this kind of position before of doing positioning for researchers and scientists. Tell me, like,
Yeah.
how did you get?
Yeah, yeah. So it's really cool. As far as I know, and I mean, everyone's like, why haven't I heard of this? And I'm like, I think we're the only group who really does this. It's something that communications and PR agency in biotech or tech or anywhere in industry is very common. If you're, if you have a small company and you're trying to get people to know about you, you're trying to attract top talent to your company, you're trying to get your customers excited. You want people to know about you and know the right things. You hire a communications person, whether they're internal, or you hire an agency who comes in and does projects for you. But academics, oftentimes they might have some services at their university. A lot of universities and research institutes do have people who, if there's a big press release, they'll kind of give you some social media copy, the words and things you should use. They might pass along, here's our standards. They might do a video for you if you're really lucky. But the idea of the group is called Stellate Communications. And so we're kind of a full stack communications firm working with researchers. We mostly work with academic researchers, also some nonprofits. Occasionally we'll tiptoe into the biotech world. But it's really about how do we do professional level science communication for all types of audiences. So some of it, the forward-facing stuff, is the stuff you might think about. We make sure that our clients get to give quotes to New York Times or Wired Magazine. If they have a really cool research paper come out, let's get them into Scientific American. Let's get them on, a podcast, helping them write perspectives pieces, helping them with social media, which sounds funny, but when Twitter was a thing, and these research findings are going to come out for LinkedIn as well, I'm sure that your Twitter score, how much your paper has been tweeted, is going to indicate more what the final citation score is than necessarily the impact factor of that journal. So, that's important, but we also do the internal stuff of we help them identify awards to apply to, and we help them with the application process, and we help them with their CV and their bio sketch and their website and kind of anything that's branding. And so usually there's two reactions to this. One is why do academic scientists need this? And it's like, well, same reasons that everyone does, which is that you want the right people to know who you are, and you want them to come to you with the really cool stuff, collaborators, funders, whoever.
Yeah.
And then, the other response that's common is like, well, isn't this cheating? Well, shouldn't professors be doing this? And that one, I just kind of like, it's kind of like an internal smile for me of, man, like we ask so much of our academics and so much of our professors. Like, do they have to be the person who is creating the tweets? I don't think so, but that's kind of my position on it.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. No, so I mean, clearly I do all of that kind of stuff, but I get that question all the time. It's like, why? I mean, for me, it's easy is because like there's no reason why, is because that I just think that it's the world's better off by hearing some of this stuff. But from the perspective, I hear that a lot, like researchers should focus on doing the research, and all of this stuff is a total waste of time. But if you think about even in the venture capital industry or in the startup industry, that positioning gives you opportunities. And it's those opportunities are invisible, right? They're implicit in the marketplace. You're never going to see them. If you do this right, you might get some sort of opportunity sometime in the future. If you don't do it at all, you're never going to see that thing. So I completely understand why you're actually doing it. And then the university itself is, I mean, I love the institution that I'm at, but they're looking out for themselves, right? For the institution.
Mm-hmm.
So academics are positioned in a weird spot where they're freelancers in the college, I guess. I think that's what they call it, right? Like you go to where the best opportunities are, and it's it's a weird model. I don't know if I'm not sure if that that applies to many other fields
Yeah.
where you're kind of like this weird freelancer. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, I
I,
mean, I think it's one of the few, I think other than entrepreneurs, it's one of the few jobs that I know of where people are constantly having to apply to keep their job.
yeah, it's weird, right?
It's a strange world. And so I think that's why Stellate is one of the few places that does this, is that I think almost all of us who work on the team have either a master's or a PhD in science. So as scientists doing this, we've done research ourselves, we've submitted fellowships ourselves, we've done our own science communication, and so we are familiar with the academic structure. We are familiar with, what's the university's positioning on this. We have a sense of it that I think it would be really difficult to have if you had never gone through some of that, or had never seen it. So it's a super fulfilling job for me because most of the clients that we work with, they appreciate the importance of this. That's why they pay it. That's why they're paying us to do this, and they're usually paying us off of grants. Again, people, whoa, from grant money, shouldn't they? Like, this is okay. Yeah, like I was a microbiologist, we would pay a flow cytometry core to run our samples because there's no reason that I should mess that up for 3 months before maybe getting it right. We pay people to do the things that aren't your specialty. So most of the people that we work with, I would say, are folks who I am super enthusiastic about getting their work out into the world. And a lot of them, I look at their CV and their bio sketch and all of their work, and I go like, this is so cool. And then you go online, you Google them, and you find, a lab website
Nothing.
from 6 years ago. Yeah, you don't even recognize the person. And it's
Yeah.
just like the world is missing out on them. So
Yeah,
that's my job, is just make sure the world doesn't keep missing out on them.
absolutely. Can you tell me about the transition out of science? I think
Mhm.
that that would have been challenging, and it's not the typical way of how you're sort of raised in the research community. So I
Yeah.
just, I'm probably I'm pushing on the,
You're like,
I'm sure, but I just want
no,
you,
no.
yeah,
It's yeah, I like you, I'm very open book, and I think that's also something that academia can actually be quite lenient on, I would say, compared to you know, I didn't realize how much freedom in some ways that you do have in academia,
yeah,
and being able to criticize it. But I think that's what's a really amazing opportunity with academia. A lot of times people will say like, well, why do you hate it? I'm like, no, I love what it could be. Some of the
mhm,
best people I've ever met in my life are academics. Some of the worst people I've ever met are academics. And, PhD Balance shares a lot of stories about people who are going through struggles in their PhD. But I think it's to get that awareness out. I also really like when we share the stories of people who've had a great experience, because I'm like, it is possible. We don't have to tell people it's impossible to have a good experience. It's totally possible. Let's hold ourselves to that standard.
yeah,
But yeah, I would say, transitioning out of science, or rather kind of out of doing the research myself, because I had done research in a lab since my freshman year of college and then went straight into grad
yeah,
school. So it's,
absolutely, yeah,
yeah, a decade of my life. Um, to your point about it's an identity, I was like, I was a researcher, I was a scientist. Who am I without this? And um, what's funny is that I get to learn more science now than I did easily in the last year of my PhD, because last year you're just
really,
telling people, yeah, because last year you're the expert, and now I get to learn from other experts all the time, and it's super fun. Uh, so I think I was much more worried about it. It was kind of like jumping into a cold pool where I was like, I'm going to freeze to death. This is going to be terrible. I don't want to be here. What am I getting myself into? And jumped in. And I was like, oh, right. You get used to it pretty fast. Some things are surprisingly difficult. Most things are much easier than expected. The surprisingly difficult is mostly that deadlines are real now. If someone says this needs to be here by Thursday at noon, and you get it to them at Thursday at 1, that's not okay. But it was uh, it was, I think, easier than I had expected it,
no,
especially.
really, yeah,
And I think looking back, you have to think. This sounds so silly, but you have to kind of think about what perspectives you're getting advice from, right? And I think about how many people I talk to about transitioning out of academia and out of research that hadn't done it.
Mm-hmm.
I think occasionally I go to a professional development thing and they bring somebody in who had left into the great beyond, and came back to tell their story of being in finance or something. And but probably 95% of the people that I was surrounded by in grad school were either currently graduate students or past graduate students. They were postdocs, they were professors of all different levels, and most of them hadn't ever left before. And I kind of liken it to the fact that I grew up in Iowa, and compared to a lot of other states, a lot of people stay in Iowa. And so if you ask people in Iowa what it's like to leave, they'll say, oh, it's not, there's nothing better out there. Like, you just got to learn to love your life here. And I always felt with Iowa, I was like, I don't think this is where I should be. I think I can actually be happier somewhere else. I'd like to at least try it. And similar to Iowa with research, I took that step out and said, I think a big thing for me was actually talking to a professor. And he's a friend of mine, and he's like, the worst thing that happens is you turn right back around, you come back in. No one's going to stop you from coming back. You might have lost a little time, but the door is not closed.
Yeah.
So get out, come back if you want. And I definitely do not want to go back in that way.
It's so amazing how it's a lot of just framing in your mind, right? Like, in terms of, we have these big barriers in our heads and I'm very much guilty of it as well. I'm like, I can never do something, and we think we're so scared of it. But then if you just have this little tweak on the framing, and you view the world just slightly differently in a more forgiving way, which I believe the world actually is pretty forgiving. If you do something, you kind of screw up a little bit. It's surprising how many times you can screw up in life and still be okay. But if you just do that little tweak, it was so, it just made you feel good inside, I think, by the sounds of it, right? Like,
yeah, I think, and I actually had this too when I was when I switched into Stellate from being in the venture and entrepreneurial space, because that's another space, as you know, where if you say, I don't want to be the entrepreneur, I don't want to be the investor, it's like, why? Do you not think you're good enough? And nobody wants me to, I would be a terrible investor. Truly not my thing. I love learning about it. I love hyping people up. I love helping them talk about it. I would be an awful investor because I would try to invest in actually everybody, and you can't do that. But I had this again, and this is something that's interesting, is that I always thought, okay, the transition out of academia is going to be super hard, and then I'll find my home. And it turns out, like, I'm going to probably keep doing that for the rest of forever, is transitioning into a new identity, a new role, a new title. And I had that same fear again of, are the people who I hold in high esteem going to look down on me for this decision?
oh my gosh, yeah.
And again, some people did. I mean, people in venture are a little more straightforward, if you, in some ways, or just kind of entertainingly so. That some of them said, like, oh, I was really surprised. Are you gonna, is this like a stint? Like, what is this until you want to find? Are you hiding from the market because the market's not good right now in venture? I was like, no, I like it. I'm good at it. I get to help people. And I work with a team that I love. And yeah, if you surround yourself with people who are supportive of you and that you have a lot of stuff in common with, then it's a lot easier to just kind of like let other stuff roll off.
Yeah, absolutely. Just be okay
Yeah.
with who you are. Absolutely. So I don't want to keep you too much longer, because I know that you've got, this is midday for you and you got tons of other things going on. But is there anything that you wanted to tell the reciprocity audience, or maybe you look back at your 24-year-old self and you're thinking of being in grad school, or you're in grad school, is there anything that you wanted to let them know, um, in
Oof.
terms, what would be the one thing that you would I can't remember. It was one of the podcasts I listened to. They said if you could put it on a billboard, uh,
Mm,
what would be that message that you would put on a billboard to that person a long time ago?
yeah, wow, man, that would be an interesting meeting to be honest. Um, I hope I have matured a fair amount since 24. Friends who know me in 24 might see this and be like, no, I hope so. Um,
Or maybe not, right?
or maybe not. Yeah. If anyone out there who knew me at 24 thinks I haven't, please let me know. I'll get to work on it. I would say, I want to make sure to say this in a way. I would say this to me. This would work for me. I don't, I'm actually a very like cynical, I'm definitely like a glass half empty person. So this works for me, but there's definitely got to be a positive way to say this. But probably tell myself like, you're not that unique. You're not that different from anybody else. And so if you're going through something, the odds are that millions of people have gone through this. If you're feeling like you're the only grad student dealing with this, if you're feeling like you're the only person from your high school who's not uh, got a job and everything else, if you feel like you're the only person dealing with these feelings, like statistically, that's pretty unlikely, you know. So yeah, I mean, there's maybe you can turn it in a more positive version, but I think it's just like be realistic here. There is no way that you are the only person who has had this feeling. And so other people have had this, other people have had these situations. Find those people and let them help you. I think 24-year-old me needed a lot of help and really, really struggled to ask for it. And so I think now I remember odds are most people that I know who I trust and care about at the worst will say, wow, that sounds really hard. And at best will say, yep, I dealt with it. Here's how I got through it. Let me support you.
Yeah, and I mean the way that I always I'm a behavioral scientist basically, and the way that I think about it is I just tell myself just look at the damn numbers, like just look at the numbers and you will see probability wise that you're totally normal right in the middle of that bell curve and everybody else feels the exact same way. And you know whatever you're going through, it you can kind of keep going, you can get through this with the right um, people that are helping you. If you don't have the people that are helping you, then you can have the courage yourself to step up. Like you yourself, that was very courageous to be open to do all these moments in your life that are breaking norms, and that's awesome.
Well,
Very
thank
cool.
you. Thank you.
Good on
Yeah.
you.
I think it has gotten better. I think, I that was 5 years ago and I'm still very very in touch with the academic community. And so I do have a lot of hope. As a negative person, I have a lot of hope for the directions that the academy is going in because, and I know it sometimes in the day-to-day it doesn't feel like that, but you look at people didn't talk about imposter syndrome in academia 10 years ago.
Oh
People
my
didn't
gosh,
talk
no.
about, advisor abuse 20 years ago. They maybe started talking about depression 10 years ago on Twitter sometimes, but hinted at it. But I think it's pretty incredible now that people are talking about it. They're speaking openly. We have people in power who are speaking to it, and we're taking it seriously. So the academy is a behemoth of an institute and has a lot of things that it needs to rearrange. But I do believe that we have the people in it who can do that and can hopefully, you know, sometime from now we'll be able to look at it and go, that's what I wish I was in. That's what I thought I was getting into. That is the version of grad school that it always should have been.
It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
That's yeah, yeah. The I don't know. That's I think this is a perfect spot to end this. And I just wanted to sincerely thank you for being a courageous, amazing human being that is making a difference in this world. and you're doing good things. So just keep on being you.
Keep on, keep on. Awesome. Well, thank you. And likewise, thanks for bringing me on. And thank you for everything that you do online to share your own story and to help other people share theirs. I know how much work that actually entails. And so I think it's pretty stellar that you have made that kind of a cornerstone of your work. Anyway,
Thanks. Appreciate it.
of course.
All right. Well, take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Will do. All right. It was good to meet you. Let me know if there's anything I can never do for you.
Absolutely. Reach out to me as well. And if there's anybody that's on the that's watching this, feel free to reach out to. I'm sure Susanna would be
Absolutely.
very open to entertaining anybody that wants to chat about PR or whatever.
Yeah, all the different stuff. Yeah, if you want to have a conversation and just talk about stuff, I'm always there. You can find me on like a lot of different social platforms. Probably the easiest to actually get my attention at this point is LinkedIn, but yeah, reach out. Would love to chat.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Of course. All right. Take care.